Hi, this is Kevin. Welcome to my tutorial on the template coding assignment. Um, you remember the last time that we left off, we were working on the EZU project, and we had created the models, the model classes, and just to review for a second here, in the course info app, if we go to models.py, we have created a model class for period, year, semester, course, instructor, student, section, and registration. Okay? And the other thing that we did is that we put some data into the database, and let's take a look at that. I'm going to fire up the development server with a run server. Okay, and we're going to open that up, and we're going to have to go to the admin app. So there we are. And I'm already logged in because the login is sticky, right? In fact, I'll just log out right now. You'll remember that we created a super user whose name was tester and who had the password secret in lowercase inside of parens. Okay, and here are all the model classes in alphabetical order, and we can look at them and enter data and change data and all that kind of stuff using the admin app. So let's look at courses. So we created 4 courses of test data, and they just happen to be the 4 courses that I'm teaching in the current semester, the current semester being spring 2021. And then I have a list of instructors, and they are 2 of my old teaching friends, me, and then 2 instructors who have the same name for whom we had to use the disambiguator feature, and we decided sort of an editorial decision that the disambiguator for instructors would be the university where they trained. So we have a Mary Smith who trained at Harvard and a Mary Smith who trained at UWM. Okay? And then we've got periods. Periods are 2 tables that are involved in defining a semester, and the periods are spring, summer, and fall. Okay, and then I'm just going to go down to the bottom and click on years. So far, the years that are in the table are 2020 and 2021. Okay, and then I'm going to jump ahead and look at semesters, and you can see that I've got spring, summer, fall for 2020 and spring, summer, fall for 2021. And you remember that I said when we were doing the model that the 2 tables, years and periods, are not going to get a formal part of the application. we're going to expect the system administrator to come to this admin app when they need to add years, or they need to change the names or the number of the periods. And so the only thing that's going to appear in the app proper is going to be semesters. And we can do that because we have the admin app. Okay, so what haven't we seen yet? We haven't seen sections. So we've got 4 sections, and I think they're all sections that I'm teaching. Yeah, they are. Okay, and then we've got 4 students. Again, I wanted to demonstrate this disambiguator feature, and I made the editorial decision that we were going to use the disambiguator to show the hometown of whoever the student is who has a duplicate name with another one of the students. So we have a William Chavez who's from Los Angeles, and we have a William Chavez who's from Oakland. They're both from California. Okay, and then we've got registrations that are a combination of a section and a student. Okay, so that's all the data that we have in the system. What we're going to do in the current assignment that we're working on today is we're going to build the beginning of the web app. Okay, so we can see these data and work with them in the web app without cheating and using the built-in admin app. Okay, and again, for years and periods, we are going to cheat, and we're only going to, whenever we need to add to those tables or to change them, the system admin is going to log into the admin app, just like we're doing here, and they're going to change the tables. All right? Okay, so let's close that for now. All right, and let's talk about what we're going to do. We need to create, what we're going to do today is we're going to create a list for each of the tables that we are going to build for. So we have, so if I can find my code here, it's right here. There we go. It's right there. Okay. So the tables that we're going to deal with are instructors, sections, courses, semesters, students, registrations. Okay, we're going to do all those. And we're going to create a list of each, for each of the tables. And this is not unlike the things that we did for the Django Girls assignment, right? So we're going to create an instructor list, a section list, a course list, a semester list, a student list, a registration list. Okay? And we're going to do the first 2, instructors and sections, together, and then I'm going to leave you to do the last 4 on your own: courses, semesters, students, registrations. Okay. All right. So the big manifestation of a page is a template file. But so far in course info, as you see, we don't have a directory for templates. So what we're going to do is we're going to create one. So inside of course info, I'm going to right click on course info and create a new directory, and I'm going to call it templates. Okay. And within the templates directory, I'm going to right click and say I want a new directory, and I'm going to say course info. And we do this, the reason why we sort of repeat the templates, we repeat the name of the app under the templates, has to do with how parts of the Django infrastructure are kind of aggregated at runtime. In this practice of having the name of the app appear again under templates, it seems odd, but it's convenient for the Django infrastructure when we go to execute the application. Okay, so inside of this course info directory that's under templates, we want to create a new HTML file. So right click on new, then pick HTML file. And we want to call this one instructor list. Instructor underscore list. Okay. And I've got my project under Git version control. So I'm going to say, well, I don't want you to ask me every time I add a file. So I want to do that. Okay. And here's what I want to do. Okay. I want to use the templating feature for the instructor list. Okay. And what I'm going to do is let's just do the simple version of it. Okay. So we're going to copy this, and we're going to put this into the body. Okay, where's the body? Here's the body right here. Okay, I'll make that code a little bigger so you can see it. Okay, so let's look at the code that I have here. The templating language, which we saw when we did the Django Girls assignment, has for loops, right? And so the control statements are inside of this curly brace and percent block. So we have a for, and then we have an N4, and we have this interesting empty. Okay. And so what we're going to do is that Django is going to pass in a data structure that's a list, and the instructor list is going to be it's going to be a bunch of database model objects. Okay, and so we are going to iterate over it one at a time, and we're going to display a link for each instructor. Okay, And how do we get the name that we print on the link? Well, we do that with another template command that has double curly braces. And the double curly braces say, get a text representation of this object for me. Okay, so for the instructor, it's going to give us the instructor name, the instructor name that we've been seeing in the admin application. So it's going to be the one that comes from the string method of the model class, which is good. And for right now, on this anchor or link HTML element, we're not going to put in the URL. Now, why is that? Well, that's because in a couple of weeks, we're going to use Django Magic to generate the URL from the reverse URL capability. And so we don't want to hand code it now, because when we get to use that kind of Django magical feature that generates the URL, we'll be happy to have that. It's going to make the application much more maintainable and changeable if we use that feature. So we're putting out an unordered list of list items. Each of them is a link. The text of the link is going to be the name of the instructor. For right now, the link is going to be dead. So if we click on it, it's not going to go anywhere at all. So what's this empty? Well, this is kind of like an else. This is sort of a combination of a for loop with an else part from an if. And what it's going to do here is if there are instructor objects in the instructor list, then it's going to do the top part. It's going to write out a bunch of list items with links. But if the instructor list is empty, instead, it's going to put out one list item in probably italics, because I think that's how M comes out. And it's going to say there are currently no instructors available. Okay? All right. So, are we ready to go yet? No, we're not ready to go yet. You'll remember from the work that we did with Django girls that there's a flow through Django. The first thing is we need an entry in urls.py. The second thing is that we need a view. And that view is what's going to render the template. Okay, so we have the template. We need the entry for urls.py, and we need some code to put into the view. Let's go to urls.py. So currently, we have the high-level urls.py that's in our what I call the metadata directory. It holds, the settings, and it holds the high-level urls.py. That's all we're using as of this assignment. Okay, and let's see. This doesn't have a lot of code in it. It has some imports. All right. Let's take a look at that. So it has some imports, and it has a path to get us to the admin app. And then let's just add something from the instructor list view. Okay, so we're going to add a path for that. Okay, now it can't find the instructor list view. That's because we haven't imported it. Okay, so we're going to import a whole list of these over time. So let's just say from course info dot views import, and then we're going to make a list. Okay, and this is going to be the first in our list, and I'm just going to copy it out of my already tested code, and I'm going to put that right here, and that needs to be indented. Instructor list view. All right, now the code on the path for the URL patterns, that has come down, but when we gave it the name instructor list view, it's still angry. And why is it angry? Well, because we don't have that view yet. We have to go create it. Well, let's go do that. Okay, so let's open up views.py under the course info app. Open it up. Okay, we don't have any code yet in views. All right, and we're going to create a view for instructor list. And let's do that. So I'm going to copy over the code from my already baked version. Okay, and put it here. All right, so the first thing I'd like to do is to get rid of the complaint that's essentially saying that we need an import. And if you look down here, there's, let me come again. When you hover over it, it gives you error, and then there's an option to import it there. Course info models.instructor is a model. That's what we want. So we're just going to click on that and get the import automatically. Okay. All right. So let's look at this code, right? What gets passed in? The request. What's a request? Well, a request is an HTTP request object that's coming in from the browser. Is there any information on it that we need? No, not for this kind of thing. This is the HTTP function that we're going to be doing here is a get, which is when you click on a link, okay, the browser issues a request that is a get, and the only information it's really passing along when you click on a link like that, in our case, is just the URL. So we've really consumed all the information from the request that we're interested in, but we pass it in as a matter of form. Okay? All right, what are we going to do? Well, the first thing that we're going to do, and again, you probably will remember back to doing a similar thing when you did the Django Girls assignment, we need to get the objects from the database, right? So we have a variable that's going to hold the list of objects. Okay, it's called instructor list. And then we use the instructor class, and we call we have a chain call. So we call on instructor we call the method objects, and then we call the method all. Okay, that's going to return a list that has all of the instructor objects in it. Okay, what's the next line that I've turned into a comment? That's some test code. We're going to test getting all of them back, right? And so when we go to the when we go to that page, we should see all of the instructors, and with the test data that I have in, we've got 4 of them. Okay. Well, does that completely test the template? No. You'll remember that the template has a provision for what if there are no instructors. So we want to make sure to test that, and this line of commented code is going to allow us to do that in just a couple minutes. Okay. So all the action, the main action of creating the page goes on in the return. Okay, we're going to call render. Render is a function that you pass 3 objects to. One is the request. Why do we pass that? Well, it turns out that if the request that came from the browser had a web form, okay, then we would want to be able to pull things out of the request form in our template. Okay, that's not something that we want to do now, but render takes a request. We're not expecting to use it in our particular template, but it's there nonetheless. The next thing is the name of our template. Okay, well, that makes sense. If we want to use the template to generate a response web page, well, we have to tell it what template to use. And then the last thing is a dictionary. It's a Python dictionary, and it's called a context. And the context is going to hold the data that we want to pass to the template page. Okay, and as any dictionary, it has key value pairs, right? So the key is the string instructor underscore list. The value is the instructor list object that we created up here on line 7. Okay? All right. Now, this is a dictionary with a single entry. Is it possible to pass more data through the context object to a template? Yes. You have one entry, a comma, a second entry, a comma, a third entry, a comma. As many of these as you need to pass in order to give the template all the data that it wants to display. That's how you do it. So this is a pretty simple view in that it gets all of the instructors, and then it calls render with a request, a template, a context, and it's a simple context that is only passing to the it's only passing to the template the instructor list. That's it. Okay. Now, let's see how that works. I think we have all the points, all the parts that we're going to need. So let's come here. Oh, let's go back to urls.py. What URL are we going to type in in order to get the instructor list page? Well, we're just going to add instructor right after the name of the host. So let's go try that. Okay, so we're here. That's the name of the host / instructor. There it is. So we have the instructor list. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instructors. Those are all the instructors that we saw when we were in the admin app. We go, hey, that works great. That's just like we wanted it to work, right? Great. Okay, now, what if this list were empty? What would it look like then? Well, how do I do this? Well, go back to my view. Okay, I'm going to take line 7, which brings back all of the instructor objects, and I'm going to toggle it into a comment. And I'm going to take line 8, which brings back none, just for testing. I'm going to toggle that out of a comment. And now I'm going to click off these lines, and I'm going to go back, and I'm going to type in the URL, instructor. And there we are, instructor list. There are no instructors available. Terrific. That's how we test that. Okay. So how long are we going to keep commented test code in our program? I'm going to say that we're going to leave it in for the current week. Okay. We'll probably take it out. Well, the next time we deal with the lists, we'll take it out. Okay, because we've tested the template. We typically don't want to leave test code hanging around inside of our production code, right? So, but when I run your code to test it, I want to be able to make sure that your template can handle no objects. And so I want a really easy way to test that for this week. So we're going to leave the test code in, but what we want is to make sure that the code that's live is the one that brings back all of the objects, and the code that's a comment is the one that brings back an empty list. Okay? So that's it. That is it. Now, let's look at that template one more time. Okay, instructor list. Well, I didn't have to do that. I just want to point out that this code in the template, it says for instructor and instructor list, what does this name have to match up with? It has to match up with the label in the context object. Well, let's go back and look at that in views. So the label of the context object is just a string, instructor list. Okay. The object that we're passing is called in this view, it's called instructor list. Okay. Now, what do we have to match to in our template? Are we matching to this? Or are we matching to the text? It turns out that we're matching the text, and we'll just do a little experiment to demonstrate that. So let's call this Waldo, okay? And now let's go to test again. Okay, we'll go in and we'll type in instructor to the URL. and it says there are currently no instructors available. Well, that's wrong. We we had a full list. What happened to it? Well, I'll tell you what happened to it, and this is something that's going to be important in your testing of templates, right? What has happened is that the template here, instructor list, it asks for an object that was passed in a dictionary that is the context object, and it asks for the label of instructor list, and the one that we had there was called Waldo. Okay, what if we change this to Waldo? Will that work? Let's just go back and see. We're going to go back to the page, instructor. There it is. It works. Now, we don't want to leave it called Waldo, but it's really important to know that context object, that's a dictionary back in the view, okay, that's how the data gets passed from the view to the template, okay, and so we need to match the name, and it's not the name of the data structure, it's the name of the label that we're storing it under. So we're going to turn this back to instructor list, and again, this is just the label, okay, and now we're going to go back to the page. We're going to get rid of that Waldo stuff. We're going to say instructor list, okay, and we're going to see that that works. So we have to click off of that line in order for it to be saved. Let's come back. We'll test it again. Instructor. There it is. Okay. So we're nearly done with the instructor list. Now, I just want to kind of talk about the parts of the Django workflow and why it's important that we do certain activities in each of the right parts. Okay, so separating our work into URLs.py, views.py, and then the template. That kind of separating your work into different predetermined portions of the infrastructure is called separation of concerns, right? And it's considered a really good way to design programs like these. And so certain actions happen only in the spot where they're supposed to under the architecture. So what goes on in URLs.py? At this point, the only thing that we're doing that happens in URLs.py is the forwarding of the request. Each of the requests that comes from the browser has a URL associated with it, and the code in URLs.py forwards execution onto the proper view. Okay? So anything that has to do with routing on the basis of the URLs should happen in URLs.py. The view, we go to the view, the view is what we call in model view controller architecture, MVC architecture. The view is the controller. I know we call it the view. Either the mothers and fathers of Django were really smart, or perhaps they should have thought of it in a different way, but um, they named it the view. Okay, the Django view is the orchestration part. What does it typically do? Well, it doesn't have to decipher the URL and figure out what to do from that. That's already been done in URLs.py. That's how we got here, right? Uh, it does have to retrieve the data from the database. That's part of what it orchestrates. It asks the model to get the data. Okay. Then it, in this case, because this is a pretty simple transaction, it just controls the rendering of the response page. And how does it do that? Well, it calls render, and it passes the request, which we're really not in this case taking anything out of, the template, okay, and then the context object, which is a dictionary which holds the data that we retrieved. Okay. All right. And then the template, the template is responsible for formatting the output. Okay. Does it retrieve the data from the database? No. Could it have? Well, the code that retrieves the data from the database is Python. Could we have found a way to get some Python in here? Yeah, you could find a way to jam some Python into the template. Is that a good thing to do? No, it's not a good thing to do at all. Why? Well, because we're breaking the Django architectural pattern. All of the heavy lifting in the Django architectural pattern goes on in the view. Okay. What does the template do? It just formats the output. Could it have retrieved the data and formatted the output? It could have. A lot of people start thinking, well, why don't I just do it all in one spot? Well, then you're breaking the architecture. Okay, so again, the template just formatting the output, putting it out. The view doing the heavy lifting, creating a list doesn't require a whole lot of work. You just have to retrieve the database objects and then call the renderer, right? And then URLs.py, and we're still using the main one. That's the one that does the routing. Okay, so that's it. So that one was pretty easy. I'm going to do the second one too. Okay, so what's the second one? Well, the second one is, oh, you know what? It's not time to do the second one yet. I'm sorry. We need to improve our template so that we use a base template and inheritance, and so we get the shell of the page with the navigation links and all that kind of stuff on every page. We didn't do that yet. Okay, so we're going to be going back to the templates, and right now we have an instructor list.html. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to bring over, I've got over here somewhere, here it is, I've got a base.html, and I'm just going to copy it, and I'm just going to paste it into the directory system there, right under the rest of the templates. And let's take a look at base.html. Okay, so base.html is a full HTML5 page, right? It has a bunch of stuff in the head, including a title element, and that's going to get a tab up the top of the browser that has the proper title. Okay. It's got a couple of meta tags that, well, the rest of the stuff in the head is just kind of standard stuff to deal with browser compatibility. Where did I get this code? Well, in the current semester, I'm working from the Pinkham book, Django Unleashed, and I believe that's where this code originally came from. In future semesters, we'll be using probably a different book, but Pinkham wrote this, the HTML that is in the head. Okay, what's in the body? Well, we have a div that's a container that holds the entire page, right? I'm sorry. It contains the content, but not the footer. All right. And then we have a header. It's going to be an H1. It's going to say EZU University Course Information System. We have a nav section that has an unordered list of links that are going to take us to the instructor list, a section list, a course list, a semester list, student list, registration list. But they're going to be dead for now because we're not going to put the URLs in until we cover that feature in a couple of weeks. So we should see them on our page, but like the other links that we're generating this week, they're going to be dead links. And then we have the main content, okay? And so we've got we have a block of content. Where is that going to be coming from? Well, that's going to be coming from the template that inherits from the main page. From the main template. I'm sorry, we're not calling it the main. We're calling it base.html, right? And this is the same thing we did in the Django Girls assignment. Okay, we're just doing a slightly fancier version here. Okay, so what are we picking up from the other page? The page that kind of calls the base page. Two things. We're picking up the title that's going to go up in the browser tab, and then we're picking up the content of the page. Okay, and what kind of content is coming off of this page? Well, at the navigation bar, okay, right now it's just going to be a navigation list, and until we give it some more styling with CSS in a couple of weeks. And then the footer. So what's in the footer? Well, boiler plate. It's going to be easier to read on the page than it's going to be to read the HTML. Okay, so we've got that. Now we have to go change instructor list.html, in order to get this, to have all the code. Okay, so some of the things that we have to add. Well, we don't want a web page here. We just want a fragment. Okay, and we want it sort of inside the tags that are going to interact with the base template. So I'm just going to overlay this code with more code. And I'll explain how you'll change yours. Okay. Okay, so the inner code, okay, the code that was in the body is exactly the same. It hasn't changed. What has changed? Well, we wrapped it in a content block. Okay, that's going to allow it to interact with base.html. And then we have another block that's the title block that just says instructor list. And then, of course, we have the code up front, the template tags up front that say that it extends base.html. Okay? So the real operating code of the template has not changed. Okay? It's just the same old code. The surrounding code has changed. Okay, so let's go test this. Okay, so let's go back. Let's go to Instructor. And there it is. Isn't that nice? So we have sort of, the header stuff, EZU University Course Information System. Now, these are the links that are eventually going to become our nav bar, okay? And then we're on the page that's an instructor list, okay? And here are the links. Here's the list of instructor links. All the links are dead. So if we click on my friend Dan Hall, we're not going anywhere. If we click on sections or students, we're not going to go anywhere. And then we have the footer. Okay, and the footer has a link to my page. Okay, and it has a link to the Creative Commons share-alike license, under which I have offered this code. Okay, and when I look at this, I'm realizing that this version of the code is not the final version for the footer, but we'll come up with a final version of the footer a number of weeks from now. This is our starter version of the footer. Okay, so we've done everything we need for instructor list. Okay, how would we do a section list? Okay, here's how I'm going to have you do the rest. I'm going to have you clone the instructor list. How would we do that? Okay, let's look. So let's copy some things. I'm going to close all these tabs. So I have instructor lists, and I wanted to go to course list. No, section list. What's the order that they appear in? Well, here's how you remember. They always appear in instructor, section, course, semester, student, registration. Why? Because I think this is the sort of flow that real users of the system would appreciate. You know, it's the one that I appreciate, and I'm the ultimate user of this app, so that's how I got that. So again, we've done instructors. Now we're going to do section, and then I'm going to leave you to do course, semester, student registration. So let's go do section. Okay. So get into the templates. Okay. And copy instructor list. Okay. And paste it in the same sub directory. Okay. And say that you want it to be called section list. It's that easy. Okay. Now, what do we have to change? Well, the title, let's make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Okay, so it shouldn't be instructor list, it should be section list. Okay, and down here, the H2, the same. This should be section list as well. Okay, and the for loop should not say for instructor and instructor list. It should say for section in section list, right? Okay, and the link text is going to be not the name of the instructor, but the name of the section. Okay, and then the message for empty is going to say currently there are no sections available. And we're done. Okay, so we click off the line here. Typically, you want all the files to end with one empty line. Okay, so if the end of the code is on 18, you want to do a return from the end of line 18 and then have no code on the last line. That's what it tends to like. Okay, so we've got that. All right, what else are we going to need? Well, if we're working backwards through the workflow, we need a view. Let's go to views.py. Okay, so let's just take this instructor list view. Okay, and we need 2 blank lines in between functions. And we're going to copy and paste it. And of course, we want to end the file with a single empty line. Okay, so it's not going to be called instructor list view. It's going to be called section list view. All right. Well, got an extra something in there. Then the variable is not going to be called instructor list. It's going to be called section list. Okay. And then the class isn't going to be the instructor class. It's going to be the section class with a capital S. Okay. Uh-oh. We haven't imported it. Okay. We can do another one of these things where we put them in a list. So we can do something like this. We ought to be able to make this a list, and we ought to say instructor, comma, section, comma. Now, all these lists of things in Python are very tolerant of having a comma after the last item. It's sort of a polite thing to do because the next person, it doesn't have to add code to 2 lines, right? Okay, so we got that. So that calmed down. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the line of test code. So it says section list. Okay, and then it has to get the section class object. Okay, and then on the last line, the request is fine. Course info, it's not, the template is an instructor list, it's section list. Okay, and then the label for the object that we're putting into the context is not instructor list, it's section list. Section list. And then the name of the variable that holds the reference to the list should be called section list as well, because that's what we put it into up here. That should be good for the view. Are we done yet? No, we have to put the entry into urls.py. So let's open that up. Okay. So let's just clone the path that we use for instructor. Okay. And so we need to indent that the right way. Okay. And so the URL should not be instructor, it should be section. So we started that, and the name of the view is not instructor list view, it's section list view. All right, section list view. What's wrong here is that we don't have an import for section list view. So let's hover over that. It says it'll add an import. Will it? Yeah, it did. Now, I want to put that on its own line. So I think that looks a little better. Okay, so I think we're ready. So let's go back to testing, open up the browser, and it said it couldn't find it, but let's try again. I've had this happen a couple of times where it's the server seems to be sleeping or something like that. But here we've got the not found. Now let's say we want to go to section. Oh, there's the section list, and those are the 4 sections that we had. That's great. That's terrific. That's just what we wanted. Are we done yet? No, we didn't test what happens when we have an empty list. If we want to properly test the template, we have to test the part. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just minimize that. So where's the code that we want to flip into test mode? Well, it's right here in the view for section list. So I'm going to toggle the one that retrieves all the objects into a comment, toggle the one that retrieves none of them out of a comment, and I'm going to click off of the lines, and now we're going to come back to our browser, and I'm just going to refresh, and it says there are currently no sections available. Now, I can tell you from my own experience, right, that you when you're testing, you ought to look for cloning errors. Okay, so where can the errors happen? One place is that if in fact we didn't change the word instructors here, we'll have an empty section list that says there are currently no instructors available. That's not good, right? Now, with the Safari browser, if you have a single tab, you don't see the title in the tab. Okay. Now let's create another tab. Okay. And you can see as soon as I create another tab, I can see I've got section list in the title. That's just what I wanted. So that looks good. Okay. So that looks like it's pretty well tested. And then what I typically want to do is before I turn off the server, I want to come down and I want to toggle the test code back into production mode. Okay. And then I want to come back and just refresh the page, and there you go. All right, so that's all we're going to do together, right? What I want you to do now, as the rest of your assignment, is to go and clone your way through the rest of the tables. So we've done instructors and sections to course, semester, student registration. Okay, and pay attention to, be vigilant that you don't accidentally forget to change some of the values in your cloning, right? Because that's typically where it goes wrong. And also remember to test the empty version, right? Because just because we put the code there, if we don't test it, we don't know if it works or not. So if in fact the list can be empty, we need to test the empty part. So that's it. This is, I think this is kind of fun. I particularly like the way these things are easy to clone. When you do the first one or two, it's like, oh, these things take a while. I'm not sure that I really like doing all the work that it takes to do this framework approach. But then when you realize that you do one and you can clone it into 5 more, then you realize that the average time that it takes you to create a page is not really that great, because there's a lot of this what I call cloning, which is to copy the last one you did and change the particulars. And that's where the productivity with this kind of framework, and it's particularly good in Django, that's where the framework really begins to pay off. Okay, that's it for me. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.